All right, the bar is closed, so you now have to listen to me for 2 hours to introduce all the jokes. Okay, we're going to close the bar for about, hopefully, an hour and a half. It depends on these guys. Anyway, thanks to everybody for coming. With the big snowstorm last February, tonight's the night. So we've been waiting a long time for this, as I know 6 people have. So it's going to be a great night. The food is wonderful here, and it's going to continue to get better. So first of all, I want to thank a couple people. The chairs of our selection committee, Pat McCardle and Pat Dillon. Give them a hand. Kristen Zaya is in the back, who's our host here at the University Club, and his wife Sarah, and their dad and mom. We're doing the videotaping. A couple other people I'd like to introduce. I'm going to ask them to stand up, but you may not be able to see them, but we'll see. Aaron Sturgis and Jody Martin from U.S. Lacrosse. I can see them. Okay, this has become a growing tradition and a lot of fun. Plus, I get a captive audience, so you have to listen to my stories until I get home, and then I get reprimanded by my wife. So it's worth it. Anyway, our chapter really has a lot going on. The golf outing was 2 weeks ago. That's a ball. If you don't come to the golf outing, you miss one of the most fun events we ever have. And we have beautiful weather. Actually, we got snowed out for this. We got rained out for the golf outing. So we moved that a week, and we got a beautiful day both days now. So we're very happy about that. Plus, we do lots of clinics. I mean, we'll do, Elaine doesn't know this yet because I haven't sent it to her, but I will. We're going to do another participation survey, but in this area, which we call the DC metro area, there are over 30,000 people now participating in lacrosse. That's youth players. Unbelievable growth. And about 5 years ago, it was like about 10. So it's youth players, high school players, college players, coaches, and officials. That's 30,000 people. Unbelievable growth. And our chapter size has grown from like about 1,500 to almost over 9,000, I think, now. So it's a great story and great fun. And these events are so much fun for me anyway. I get to tell stories all the time. So anyway, next year we'll do the same thing. We're great programs in training officials. We used to have a shortage of officials. Don't have that anymore. We train the high school kids to referee. Then they go to college and they come back and they become umpires and referees. We train the coaches. There's now an official certification coach program. So as we say, I always tell them, I say, I can walk out on the field and in 30 seconds tell you which coach knows what to do and which one doesn't. And it's true. And there's certain fundamental training, and I don't know how many people we put through it, but it's an awful lot. So let me, tonight we have the privilege of having a lot of former inductees back. So I'm going to ask them to come up here and stand right here so we can get a picture of them. So from the class of 2004, Rob Boardley. Rob's in here somewhere. Where's Rob? And Pat Dillon. Come on up here and stand up here. Where's Rob? I know he's here. I saw him earlier. Somebody go get him out of the bar. Damn football coaches. From the class of 2005, Susan Merritt and Dave Urich. Come on up here. Dave sometimes comes to our golf outing and he always tells me, swing hard in case you hit something. Problem is he's right. From the class of 2006, Lenny Castellino. I saw Lenny come in. Elaine Knobloch and Tristan Zaya. Where'd Tristan go? He was here a minute ago. Round him up. We need his picture. From the class of 2007, where's Michelle Maxwell Golden? And me. The class of 2008, is Ann here? Ann McBride, where's Ann? I didn't have a chance. Ann McBride and Pat Stewart. Where's Pat? All right. And from last year's class, the class of 2009, Tom McHugh, our native leprechaun. All right. We find Rob. We got to get Robbie down there. Where's Rob and who are we missing?
In the back.
Anybody find Rob? Rob.
We'll take this picture.
Did he have to run out? Okay. Okay, great. Let me get down here then.
Maybe up front.
30 years, you haven't changed. I know. Stand up too. I didn't hear that.
No flash, too much glare.
Everybody smile. One more.
All right. Let's give him a big round of applause. This is our eighth annual Hall of Fame, and the plaque's out there, and we're closing in. After tonight, we'll be over 50 inductees. So it's quite a group, and we're starting to build more and more, and it gets better every year. I'll say that. My jokes get better every year too. Okay, so we want to start out. Did my on the way buddy get here yet?
Yes.
All right, good. I get an email on my phone that says, I'm on the way. I said, get your ass down here now. Okay, let me bring up and introduce Pat Dillon, and Pat's going to tell you about a couple of awards that we give every year to some people that we lost. Pat?
Okay, those of you who've been to the affair here before know that we give 2 awards in honor of a referee and an umpire from the men's game and women's game that we, as Homer has mentioned, we've lost. Tom Shekels was a very good friend of Homer's, and Madeline Curlin was a very good friend of mine. When we lost them way too early, we decided, you know, we need to do something to recognize these 2 people. They were great lacrosse people, involved in lacrosse for years and years, kids played and everything else. So we named a service award in honor of Tom and Madeline, and we give an award each year to a junior umpire and a junior referee, and an adult umpire and adult referee, men's game, women's game. And we present those here tonight at the Lacrosse Hall of Fame because we want to have those people recognized in front of this great lacrosse community. We could do it in our yearly meetings in front of the other officials, but we really want this award to be more than just in front of the officials. We want the entire lacrosse community to recognize the folks who are getting these awards tonight. So I will start with the Curlin Awards. We have a nice write-up on each one of the inductees in your program, so I'm not going to go over that again, but let me ask Bridget Corridon to come up. Bridget, where are you? I know you're here. Oh, there she comes. I'm going to make them stand here a little bit while I talk a little bit about them. Right here, you're fine. Okay. Bridget is our Junior Lacrosse Award winner, official. She started playing lacrosse when she was in the 5th grade, if I'm correct, and has been involved with lacrosse ever since then. She's now, the program needed to be a little updated. She's now a 2nd-year student at Virginia Tech, not just a freshman anymore. Has been a goalkeeper, very successful in her career as a goalkeeper at the high school level, has coached at the youth level, and more importantly for us, she got involved in the junior lacrosse umpiring program for us and did that for 3 years when she was also playing and going to high school. She was a great junior official and helped mentor some of the new girls, including her own sister, Kelly. And we are very, very happy to have Bridget here tonight to present her with the award. I do have to mention that when the award was going to be given in February, Bridget's mom and dad were going to be here, and I think her sister was going to come, and unfortunately, with the postponement, some family things came up, and the family has been at a wedding out of town. And Bridget and her mom, at Bridget's insistence, I understand, left the family affair and got in the car and drove. It took them 6 hours today to get here from up in the New York area. So a huge amount of dedication on Bridget's part, which carries over from her days on the lacrosse field and now is a student at Virginia Tech. So Bridget, we're very happy to present this award to you. And where's Margaret? Margaret Kondracki is our local board chair, and I'd like to have Margaret come up and present the award to Bridget as the 2009 Madeline Curlin Award winner for the junior lacrosse program. Why don't you stand down there and get your picture taken? So we hope Bridget's back up here someday as continuing her lacrosse umpiring career and comes back as an inductee into the Hall of Fame. So, all right, our next inductee, the adult lacrosse person, Greg, come on up here. Greg Gochner. Greg is a gentleman who never played lacrosse before. His love was, I think, track and cross country, if I'm not mistaken. But he saw a game in women's lacrosse where he could use his skills as a runner and get out there and get involved and be involved in a game that seemed to be pretty fun and pretty fast. And so he got involved and became an adult official for us. His children have played a little bit, I think. And so he's stayed in touch that way. He's still an active official. He does high school and college games. He's raised the level of his game from starting out at the youngest level and now has advanced into doing college games. And I think the main focus for us is the way he gives back to the sport. He has helped train the junior girls officials in Montgomery County who do the youth games in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is a huge, we need these young women like Bridget to come back and help us. We don't have enough officials, despite what Homer said, that we do have enough. We never do. So we need the young girls to come back, and we need people to help train them, and Greg is one who does that with our girls in Montgomery County. He's a Renaissance guy. If you read his bio in the program here, you'll see he does everything from officiating lacrosse to fishing of all kinds, and he's also an award-winning beekeeper. So I don't know how that fits in with lacrosse, but he...
Sweet.
Sweet. It's very sweet. Very good. And he is a sweet guy, and I love officiating with him, and he's a lot of fun to work with. So, Margaret, come on up and present the award to Greg Gochner, Madeline Curlin Award winner for 2009. Our official photographer, Pat McCardle, thank you. All right, we're going to turn it back over to Homer, and he's going to do the same presentation for the Shekels Award winner.
One thing Pat reminded me of that I do want to do, as Pat Dillon said, we lost a couple of great friends in Tom and Madeline. But recently we also lost another great lacrosse person, and that was Brendan Looney, who was killed in Afghanistan, played at Navy, played at DeMatha, and a member of the Looney family. So I'd just like to take a moment and have a moment of silence for Brendan's departure. Thanks. Great, thank you very much for doing that. He'll be missed, as we know. Okay, moving on, as I said, Tom and I were high school buddies and we played together in lacrosse in high school, and then he went on to Army, and he's in the Lacrosse National Hall of Fame. And it was a tough loss for everybody, for me, for Brian Poole, who was over here, and others who knew him. But we established an award in Tom's name, and it's in the program. On the first page, I think on the page, you can see we've been doing it since 2003. when Tom passed away, had a heart attack while hiking out west. But the 2 award winners, again with the postponement, we run into all kinds of problems. So I'm going to ask Bill Harvey to come up here. Where's Bill? Here he comes. Bill's going to accept it for Brent Sikora. Brent is now at VMI, and this is Parents' Weekend. And so they're all out there. So I couldn't ask him to come back from that, but I talked to his mom and dad a lot, and Brent has been he played at Centerville High School, was a midfielder there. His brother Zach is also a junior official. So we're building a family tradition in that one as far as officiating. He completed the U.S. Lacrosse certification course, which is, thanks to Bill, has turned out, I guess, what do we say, over 600 umpires and junior referees in the last 5 years. So we're and they're coming back now. So they go to college and used to come back and maybe play for Tristan and some of the groups. Now they come back and they want to referee. So it's really been a big benefit to us to have them doing that. Brent, as I said, was a midfielder at Centerville High School, and then went on and is now at VMI and playing out there. So Bill's going to accept the award for Brendan.
Thank you.
All right. Put Brendan.
Why don't you stand up there? Stand up there. That's beautiful.
Ever seen a bald-headed youth official? Gotcha. Okay, one more. So for the senior referee award, this guy is unbelievable. We were laughing because I called him and said, "You better get down here now." And I get an email message on my phone that says, "On the way." But our senior award winner is Bob Manfuso. So Bob, come on up here. You got to stand here for a while to talk about you.
All right.
Bob's unbelievable. He's been doing this for over 20 years. He is probably the premier official at any level in this area. I love refereeing games with Bob. I learned something, even as old as I am. Can teach old dogs new tricks. Every time I referee him, I learn something new. But when Tom died, Bob took over, and we've never missed a beat. And I don't know how many games we schedule now. What is it, like a couple thousand a year? So in the fall, it's like 80 games every Sunday. And anybody who doesn't, people sort of don't understand the assigning job. They'll go, "Why do you need an assigner?" Do it once, and I guarantee you'll understand. You got to be a psychologist. You got to learn who goes with whom. What coach doesn't like this person, what coach doesn't like that person, what referee doesn't like this person. And then you got to get them out there. And then you got to hang around to the last minute when somebody calls up and says, "Well, my dog got sick," or "my car won't start," and off he goes to fill their spots. So without Bob, we'd be nowhere. As I said, he's a very shy guy. When I told him he was getting the award, he goes, "No," I said, "you don't have a choice. The decision's been made." So without Bob, lacrosse would be miles behind this year. So give me a big hand for Bob and congratulations. Do it again.
Get the plaque.
One more time, Pat.
One more time. Don't look down. There you go.
There you go. All right.
Thanks. I'm serious. Great guy. Tom did a yeoman's job, but the game is tenfold in numbers now, and he handles it year-round in stride, like nobody I've ever seen. About time we got him, I finally said, "We're not waiting anymore, you're getting it." Okay, so now for the good part. You get rid of me, and out of jokes. So I'm going to bring Pat back up to introduce our first inductee. Pat?
We don't go in any particular order. We don't go in alphabetical order. We don't go, I don't know what kind of order, height order. There you go. So we keep everybody guessing. We don't go in the order of the program. So we make the people in the front row here suffer, wondering, am I going to be next? So here we go to start the parade. Our first inductee was an exceptional athlete at both the high school level here in this area at Holton Arms School, as Suzanne bows her head, and at the college level at Brown University. You know, I'm sure all of us here tonight would be thrilled to excel in one sport, but Suzanne was a bona fide star in two, both in soccer and lacrosse. She was named an All-Ivy League Player of the Year in both sports when she was at Brown. She was named an All-American in both sports, which is a pretty tough thing to do. Soccer really was her main sport when she was at Holton, and she really only played 1 year of high school lacrosse because of an injury. Yet she was able to excel at lacrosse both, you know, at Brown, and then she went on to play even on the U.S. team. She's been a school administrator, an athletic director, a coach, and a teacher. It seems the only field she hasn't tackled is officiating. And I may have to work with her on that addition to her resume. So I'll be calling you later, Suzanne. Okay, she's returned now to the Washington area. She's been living out of town up in Rhode Island, but she's returned now to the Washington area, and she's passing on her love for learning and for sports to the students at the Potomac School. You know, induction into any Hall of Fame says that a person has reached the pinnacle of athletic achievement. And not many can say they've been inducted even into one Hall of Fame. Suzanne has already been inducted into 3. As I heard somebody say, one of her friends say, I'm on the Suzanne Hall of Fame train. I just follow her around every Hall of Fame induction. But she's been inducted into the Holton Arms School Hall of Fame, the Brown University Hall of Fame, and the New England Soccer Hall of Fame. Pretty incredible. So it's my honor now to present an exceptional athlete and a truly nice person tonight as we induct her into her 4th Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Suzanne Bailey.
Oh my goodness, that was very generous. Thank you, Pat. Oh, it feels surreal. My deepest appreciation to the selection committee. I'm so humbled by this award, but truthfully, it feels sort of awkward for being honored individually in a sport that is ultimately a team endeavor at every stage. I had tremendous teammates, great athletes, even better people, and I feel like this is about them as much, if not more, than it is about me. I want to again thank Pat Dillon, as well as Homer Schwartz and Pat McCardle for all of their hard work over the past, what must now be, couple of years. They seem to take this past February's snow debacle in stride, but we all know that the cancellation at least doubled the amount of work they put into making this fantastic event happen. You've all been so generous, thoughtful, and patient in everything you've done. Thank you. Thank you also to my friends and family for being here tonight, all of you. It means so much to me that we're here together. I'll have more to say about her in a moment, but for now I simply want to recognize Carolyn Norris, my coach at Brown, and tell her how grateful I am that she made the trip all the way down from Providence, Rhode Island. In fact, in February, I think she was sitting on the runway when she got the word that it wasn't going to be possible. Her schedule now as an athletic director is unrelenting, so I fully appreciate the magnitude of what you've done. Thank you. In many ways, I think my path here tonight is simply the result of 2 incredible opportunities that I was given, and I believe the most meaningful gifts I've received from playing lacrosse can be encapsulated in 2 very brief stories. So that's what I'd like to share with you. This past week, Potomac School enjoyed what's known as Spirit Week, which culminated in today's homecoming. Thursday was declared Decade Day, and a member of our faculty thought it would be festive for teachers to come dressed as high school versions of themselves. For me, this involved donning a Holton kilt. As soon as I looked down at the familiar polyester plaid, I could almost feel the knot in my stomach that was present on the first day of school, the second day of school, and I think the 458th day of school. It was not my idea initially to attend the Holton Arms School, but thankfully my parents were very wise and unrelenting. They were also generous far beyond what I could understand at the time. They gave me the gift of education, first at Holton and then at Brown University. Not only was I introduced to a sport that required the unfathomable, wearing yet another kilt, but I also began to see that I might be capable of more than I realized. I cannot thank them enough for an opportunity that continues to impact every area of my life. Thank you. The second opportunity to which I referred involves the fact that I never had any business playing lacrosse in college, and I never would have were it not for Carolyn Norris. As Pat said, I was recruited to play soccer, not lacrosse, but Carolyn gave me the chance and then had the patience to teach me. Since I'd only played one full year in high school, I know I was quite a project, but Carolyn is a passionate and gifted educator who's also very wise. My first year, when I was skill challenged, to say the least, she told me just to run with the fast kid on the other team, and whatever I did, get rid of the ball as soon as I got it. True story. My ball-holding privileges increased slowly as I learned to cradle, but so did my tendency to be hard on myself. Yet Carolyn always knew when to make me laugh or when to tell me to keep my head, that she wasn't yanking me just for missing a shot, at least one. I couldn't have asked for a better, more intuitive, and inspiring teacher of the game. I feel fortunate now to call her a friend. There's no way this would be happening without you, Carolyn. These two opportunities led to a surprising and unlikely career at Brown that ultimately gave me the chance to attempt playing at the next level. And this is where the two short stories I mentioned are set. When I think about this stage of my career, I have an image in my head of a catapult. In a way, I feel like I was slung pretty far and fast, but as proven by Newton's first law, that any object in motion will stay in motion until acted upon by an outside force. My soaring ended with experiences that smacked me into some pretty hard walls. And this, I know now, was a very good thing. Although it might be strange to cite these types of experiences at an event like this, advancing age gifts us with aching limbs and surgical scars, as Mike knows, but it also gifts us with perspective. The three things I keep returning to when I look back on my playing career are the invaluable lessons of accountability, humility, and resilience. As a teacher and coach today, I'm not sure there's anything more important I can try to help my kids learn. I don't know if you remember the way the 1994 film Pulp Fiction was structured. It was done in disjointed vignettes, such as the gold watch, the Bonnie situation, and ultimately these vignettes fit together to create a whole story. I sort of see my two recollections in a similar way, but without cocaine or semi-automatics. The first of these incidents, a lesson in accountability and humility, I think of as the Perth safety pen incident. We were on a vast expanse of fields in Perth on Australia's west coast playing the Aussie national team, and I remember there were magpies everywhere. I happened to notice this detail because I was occupying my customary spot on the sideline, which really was okay because I was still floored by the fact that I'd even made the touring team. Anyway, all of a sudden, we became aware that our goal-scoring phenom, Kathleen Geiger, was experiencing a wardrobe malfunction in the form of a pop button, and she was in desperate need of securing her kilt. Without a moment's hesitation and feeling especially empathetic, because I had recently incurred the same problem, albeit at a far more opportune time, I tore off my own safety pin and held it up for Kathleen's reinforcement. My confidence that my services would not be needed that afternoon probably didn't represent the kind of confidence our coaches were looking for. But I think of myself as a realist. We needed Kathleen to score goals more than we needed me to be properly clothed on the sideline. So I surreptitiously clutched the fabric, holding my kilt together, and prayed that Sue Stahl wouldn't decide to holler, "Bailey," in that understated voice of hers, and send me running onto the field in a compromised state. It was a risk worth taking, though, because I knew we needed Kathleen, and I understood that my primary job, whether in practice or in practicality, was to assist the players who would make a difference on game day. From that experience, I later reflected that contrary to what we learn as little kids about there being no I in team, there most certainly is. Every individual is accountable for knowing what she must do to the best of her ability to help the team thrive. There is great humility in this if you are honest with yourself. And believe me, nothing says humility like standing on a sideline, holding up your kilt, and knowing that at that particular moment, there is nothing more important you could be doing to help your team. So finally, last story. 1 year later, when the stakes were higher, I experienced what I think of now as the alternate phone call, which is a rumination on resilience. After a punishing weekend of final tryouts to determine the '93 World Cup roster and a long drive back to New England, I received a phone call from Sue Stahl informing me that I would be an alternate for the team that would travel to Edinburgh, Scotland. Appropriately so, the U.S. would be represented by an outstanding group of women, many of whom had been with the U.S. team for years and had previous World Cup experience. It's horribly silly now, because at the time I lacked perspective, but all I wanted to do was crawl into a deep, dark hole and stay there for a long time. Obviously, being named an alternate for a World Cup team was an incredible honor, and I knew in my heart that I was lucky even to be there. But in my youth, I couldn't process this. All I knew then was that I'd failed to achieve the most that was possible. I was ashamed, and in sports, it was the hardest wall I'd ever hit. Looking back now, this entire experience was one of the best things that could have happened to me. In the end, going through training camp with the team and helping them prepare for competition, which we won, was an amazing learning opportunity. But more importantly, I believe that ultimately the experience made me a better teacher and coach. I've realized how much I enjoy working with kids for whom things do not always come easily, yet they persevere because they simply find joy in the effort. I realize now what a precious opportunity it was for me to learn about resilience and to be able to be authentic in trying to teach kids of all levels to value what they do and to know that regardless of what it is, it matters to the team. It's helped me to teach kids how they may grow through challenging circumstances, and I'm fortunate to be able to bring this to the work I do in schools now at Potomac. In closing, the word play actually comes from the Old English plagen, which literally means to take a risk. I'm grateful for the chance lacrosse afforded me to take risks, and so grateful for the people who helped me along the way by giving me opportunities, by being teammates and mentors, and by being so generous. My parents made enormous sacrifices to send me to Holton Arms and Brown. Carolyn Norris took a big risk by putting a kid on the field who couldn't catch or throw, but gave me the precious gift of being able to play. U.S. Lacrosse asked that I put my entire sense of self on the line every time I picked up a stick. This forced me far out of my comfort zone, helping me grow into a teacher, which is the most important thing to me today. Again, thank you very much. I am honored and deeply appreciative. Congratulations to Hutch, Mary Pat, Ryan, Michael, and Bud. It's overwhelming, to say the least, to be included among you, as well as among the current members of the Hall of Fame who are here tonight. Hope everybody continues to have a great evening. Thank you.
Okay, we're off to a great start, and it's getting better, I can tell you that. Our next inductee, you should know. Well, I have to tell you a story. I can't do this. This one has double meaning for me. Our next inductee is Ryan Curtis. His dad is Mike Curtis. I grew up in Baltimore in the years of the Baltimore Colts. His dad was one of my heroes. And Brian Poole and I were talking about it earlier. So here's Mike, and we go out to, thanks to Elaine, they put on a golf outing for Richard Montgomery High School, where Ryan's dad went to school. So we go out there, and it's 3 of my high school lacrosse buddies, Brian Poole, John Kenworthy, and Eddie Studi. The names don't make any difference. But we go up to a par 3, and there's Mike, who is hosting the tournament. And he tells us a story about this 5-iron he's got in his hand. And we looked at it. It was about 25 years old, and I knew where he got it. So anyway, the deal was he hits a ball, and then we all hit balls, and you can use whatever one you want. Well, Mike hits the first ball into the woods, so, and these guys are pretty good golfers that I'm playing with. So the next year we come back, and the same thing happens. We come to the par 3, and there's Mike again, and so we all start talking, and we say, who wants to go up and ask Mike, say, Mike, you mind if we just hit your ball? Because we know one of us can hit the green, and we know you have no chance of doing it. But anyway, Mike, you're one of my heroes. It's great to see every time we see these. But tonight's about Ryan, another great player who I had the pleasure of officiating many of the games at Landon. And I'm sad to say he went to Virginia, so I got to watch him beat Hopkins a lot. So, oh well. Anyway, Ryan won 4 IAC titles while at Landon. I mean, you can read about his record in there. It's unbelievable. All-American lacrosse player at Virginia, team leader, captain, went on to play professional lacrosse in the MLL, won every award you could possibly win, one of the greatest athletes and defensemen that I've ever seen play. So I'll get out of the way and bring up Mike, and congratulations, Mike. Ryan. Mike's already in something.
Just want to say, listening to Suzanne talk before me, I'm in a lot of trouble. I've got a 3-month-old upstairs and a 4-year-old, and let's just say I'm not getting a lot of sleep, so there's not a lot of free time. But I would like to thank everybody. It's funny for me sitting here and thinking about this award. It's a little strange because I feel pretty much everything that I've done in my life, the positives that I've experienced, were kind of given to me by lacrosse. Whether it was going to Landon, playing for a coach like Coach Bordley, going on to Virginia to play for Dom, traveling to Japan, traveling to England, met my wife, my kids' godparents, everything. My current job, everything's really been directly related to lacrosse, and I feel like it's given me so much to stand up here and accept an award. Having played the game is, a little strange for me. I think I've been very lucky. I had 2 parents who didn't really tell me what to do, despite the fact that, some people think it's strange, having a dad who played football in the NFL. I was going to be pushed to play a sport or another. In his mind, lacrosse was just a preppy sport when I was growing up. One thing both my parents really gave me, though, was a sense of if you're going to do something, do it the right way and do it hard. And I think I was up until the last couple of years when I refused to admit my age and kept trying to play and had some injuries. I was very lucky to, throughout high school, college, and professionally, to never miss a game due to injury. And I was very lucky to, in high school, play for Coach Bordley, who left, unfortunately, because I've got one good story about him that I actually just learned last week. And to play for Coach Starja. I think both those guys, having played for them, they were very different. But at the end of the day, they were both guys that made you want to play very hard. And you didn't want to let those guys down for 2 very different reasons. But it's something now as a coach that it's hard to do. It's hard to get guys, in my case, it's hard to get guys all on the same page and not want to let anyone down. So I was lucky to play for those two guys. The interesting thing about Coach Bordley, you didn't want to let him down because he'd compare you to his younger daughter who's here, or she was here, who at the time I was playing for him, I think was 4 or 5. He blamed me my senior year, or up until my senior year. We lost to Episcopal my freshman year, and I think the second goal of the game in the first quarter, I slid wrong and they scored. And until my senior year, I was solely responsible for one loss in the IAC over the course of my 4 years. He had a way of not letting you feel too good about yourself. And then Dom, I think Dom was very different in that, he just kind of let you do your own thing, and you felt that you owed it to him to do that to the best of your ability. And I think the one thing I can say, looking back on my career, is I never took a day off. It meant a lot to me to be out there, and I tried to play hard every time. So the one quick, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to bring this up with Coach Bordley. The one quick story that I have about him, I'm a coach now at the University of Vermont, and I'll call Coach Bordley every once in a while about some of his players, and he's well known for being very honest, and I think to a fault. There was a player I called him about, and he said, "Oh gosh, man, he is slow. He quit football. He wants to dance around. He can't play." So I said, "All right, I trust Coach Bordley. So we won't pursue this guy for too much longer." And he ends up committing to a school that we play, and we lost out on the kid. So I called him up and I said, "Coach," and he's like, "He won't do well there." And I talked to my college coach pretty much weekly, and was relaying that story for some reason to Dom, and just said, there's two different spectrums. There's the coaches who they've got the best player in the world for you, and you watch the kid play, he can barely run. And then there's Coach Bordley. So I mentioned that to Dom, and he said, and this was about a week ago. He said, it's funny you mentioned that, because I remember calling Coach Bordley about you. And having never heard this story, I was interested to see what he had to say. And his response to Dom upon getting a phone call about me was, "I don't know what the deal is. He's short, there's a lot of hype, he can't catch, and he's just not that good." And so I guess I have to thank Dom for going out on a limb and giving me a shot. But I am going to keep it pretty short, because when I saw Homer tonight, he said, "Yeah, in the past these things have gone pretty long," and just kind of looked at me. So I'll get down now. But again, I wanted to thank you guys for this. This certainly means a lot to me, and congratulations to everybody else. Thank you.
Congratulations. One of the greatest defensemen I ever saw play, by the way, despite what Rob said.
My turn. All right. And our next inductee, Kim and Mary Pat are looking at each other. Is it going to be me? All right, it's never easy being a pioneer in any endeavor, and certainly not when you're trying to start a lacrosse program, a non-traditional sport in an area that really doesn't have a strong lacrosse tradition. Mary Pat Veihmeyer is truly a pioneer. She was a very successful hockey coach, and I think it says a lot about her as a person and as a teacher and as a coach that she was the one who was approached by the girls at Whitman who wanted to take on a new challenge and start a lacrosse team at their school. Thankfully for the sport of lacrosse in Montgomery County and in our area, Mary Pat took on that challenge, and she nurtured that new club lacrosse team until it reached varsity status. Though mentioned in the program, which I hope you all will read, it's part of Mary Pat's bio. I really think I have to bring this up. It's such an incredible feat that it bears repeating here in front of everybody. From 1996 to 2004, the Whitman lacrosse teams that Mary Pat coached recorded a 96-game winning streak. 96 games in a row. I mean, you talk about your remarkable achievements, that ranks right up there. I don't know that that's ever going to be duplicated in the county again. So it's an honor for me tonight to present for induction a great teacher, a wonderful mentor to many, many of the kids there at Whitman, both the field hockey and the lacrosse players, and a truly excellent coach. Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Pat Veihmeyer. Wow, that was great. Thank you. I do have to say, though, that 96-game streak was not against the privates. It was against the other county schools. That's all right. It's still 96. My story is probably a little bit different from the other inductees because I never played lacrosse. And some of my nephews, as they pointed out to me, how can you be going into a Hall of Fame and you know, play the sport? Some of them are sitting here. But I actually had never even heard of lacrosse until I got up to Frostburg. And a lot of my friends from the field hockey team also played lacrosse. So watching their games was really my first exposure to the sport. And then, as Pat said, it was 92 when some of my hockey kids came up and said, well, we want to get this started. Will you be our coach? And so that's where it began, and I quickly fell in love with the sport. I was quickly hooked. I loved the speed. I loved the skill level required for the girls to play the game. And from there, it went on to all of a sudden we were working with the guys' side with Ed Kostolansky to try to get Montgomery County to make lacrosse an official sport. And then when we finally reached that in '97, and then it was years and years and years of working to get the JV program in. So it's been a lot of years. We've only had JV for 2 years, so hopefully now we'll start to catch up with some of the private schools in the rest of the state. But my lacrosse has really given me a great opportunity to work with the girls in teaching those life skills that you get from a team sport. The discipline, the teamwork, the cooperation, the character building that goes along with it. And I have to thank my parents and my coach at Frostburg, my field hockey coach, Barb Sargent, because they were the people who inspired me. I never ever dreamed of myself as a coach. I kind of fell into it by accident when I graduated. But in looking back, Barb really taught me how to encourage the development of those skills in young girls. So that's where we got started in lacrosse, and I've been really, really fortunate with all the people, all the friends that I've made through lacrosse. Many of you sitting in this room were my role models when I first started, and it's such an honor to go in with Kim tonight because I bugged her like crazy, trying to learn everything I could from her. You were always great, Kim, and gave me, number one, we weren't very good in the beginning, and we would play a lot of JV teams just to get some game experience. And she was always so gracious and say, sure, come on over and play us. And she never killed us. She always made it reasonable. So I thank you for that. But there are lots of private school coaches here who did the same for me, and I always have appreciated that. I've also, since Montgomery County actually started lacrosse, I've been the state rep from Montgomery County to the State Lacrosse Committee. And that has been a great opportunity for me also to work with a really tremendous group of dedicated and generous people, and I still use them as my think tank when I don't understand what's going on, what we need to get my team to do. I also want to thank the Whitman family, because it's been a true privilege coaching both hockey and lacrosse there. I don't think many coaches can say, looking back, that they worked with great athletic directors, fellow coaches, the parents, the players,
all of those people with whom I've worked it's just made my lacrosse experience wonderful. And so I really am privileged to be at Whitman still. They haven't fired me yet. I also want to thank my family. They're taking up the whole second row there. And believe it or not all of them could swing it around in their schedules to get here, but I so appreciate all the travel arrangements that went into surprising me today for some of them, and rearranging huge travel plans to be here tonight for me, so I really appreciate that. My parents and my family have always been my greatest supporters, my biggest fan, and they have spent countless hours on the sidelines and in freezing games and hot boiling games in the sun. So I so appreciate all that support that you have given me. To the nominating committee of Potomac Lacrosse, thank you so much for thinking enough of me to honor me tonight. And it is an incredible honor to go in with these guys, and so I am very appreciative. Thank you very much. I'd like to close with a quote that one of my former players sent to me. I'm keeping mine short. Love the game. Love the game for the pure joy of accomplishment. Love the game for everything it can teach you about yourself. Love the game for the feeling of belonging to a group endeavoring to do its best. Love the game for being involved in a team whose members can't wait to see you do your best. Love the game for the challenge of working harder than you have ever at something, and then even work harder than that. Love the game because it takes all team members to give it life. Love the game because at its best, the game tradition will include your contributions. Love the game because you belong to a long line of fine athletes who have loved it. It is now your legacy. Love the game so much that you will pass on your love of the game to another athlete who has seen your dedication, your work, your challenges, your triumphs, and then that athlete will, because of you, love the game.
Pat said, now she can relax. She made it, she made it, she made it. Homer?
Okay, quite a crew we got here tonight, huh? I'm going to steal one of Pat's words again, and pioneer, I think, is a great way to describe it. The order, as people are presented, guess how it's decided. Pat and I get together before the dinner and decide who's going when. So the next person, another pioneer, Bud Mayo, this time in Northern Virginia. Bud is an amazing person. I first got to know him when he was president of the Potomac chapter, and I first came on the board. And it was an interesting meeting. I'll relay it to Bud. I said, well, I think we ought to have a golf outing. He said, good, why don't you do it? So I did. And then I said, I think we ought to have a Hall of Fame. He said, good, why don't you do it? So here we are. Anyway, Bud has created so many things. He started lacrosse in Northern Virginia, the first public high school team at Lake Braddock, and that's where it has grown into over 30 now, I guess it is, and started the program at St. Stephen's. And then one thing Bud taught, he used to teach a course called Lacrosse 101, he called it. And it was for parents and players or whatever, and it was all the fundamentals. And that has now evolved into a formal coaches and parents and officials training program that U.S. Lacrosse has put together, as Aaron knows. And it's really been a great benefit. So I'd like to bring up at this time and introduce to Bud Mayo, another one of the great pioneers of lacrosse in our area.
Thank you, Homer. I feel like I'm soaring with the Eagles tonight. It's hard to believe, but 35 years ago, there was no lacrosse in Northern Virginia. You couldn't buy a stick. You couldn't find a dozen people that could tell you what lacrosse was. I was a coach at that time at Lake Braddock High School, brand new high school, cutting edge kind of school. And two boys from Towson, Maryland were on the team. And they came up and they said, "Coach, you know, we ought to start a lacrosse team." And I said, "Boys, you know, what I know about lacrosse, I could probably write on my thumbnail." Some of the guys in my college fraternity would break out windows with lacrosse balls, and I saw that happen. They said, that's fine, that's all you need to know. So we began a process of putting up flyers and asking people. Next thing you know, we had 60 people wanting to play lacrosse. Many of them had never even seen a game, but they were willing to give it a try. Well, I can tell you at that time, this is in the early 70s, the climate for lacrosse was not positive. Athletic directors dug their heels in. They were vehemently against anything new. You still had some dinosaur athletic directors who only believed that there were only three sports: football, basketball, and baseball. Anything else, we don't need. Well, with the help of a lot of people, and I saw Pat Stewart today, and his mom and dad were two of the people that I leaned on. Another parents, Nancy and Larry McGinnis, they backed me up in dark times. My wife, Sue, backed me up when I'd come home and I'd say, you know, the athletic director told me today if I kept pushing this lacrosse thing, you're going to get fired. That's a nice awakening. Walked in his office and he had two lacrosse balls. And he said he would deliberately, I think back now it was funny, I didn't think it was funny at the time. He'd say, "You know, I'm getting tired of having these lacrosse balls brought to me because those boys of yours are breaking windows with those lacrosse balls." And he said, "You know something, boy?" And you know, he was a good old guy from Tennessee, and I guess his heart was in the right place somewhere. And he said, "You need to really think about what you're doing, because this lacrosse is going to get you fired. Do you understand what I'm saying, boy?" I said, "Yes, sir, I understand." And then next thing I know, I'm in the principal's office. And the principal was a man named John Allwood, whose name will be lost in the history of lacrosse. But he is the man who gave the blessing for lacrosse to start in Northern Virginia. He said to the athletic director, "If we've got 60 kids that want to try something, I don't care if it's tiddlywinks they want to try. We've got to go with that." Well, the athletic director huffed and puffed and went out, and the principal kind of looked at me like, "Yeah, I hope you can pull this off, because I'm out on a long, long limb with this." So we went out on the field, and you know, the things like the Bad News Bears come to mind and things like that. We had a conglomeration of kids that had played hockey. We had them wearing hockey gloves, football helmets, lacrosse helmets, those old leather back rack gloves. And I don't think we had one person that was out there that had a complete set of equipment. I can remember one day being out there and seeing an Army officer standing on the sidelines, and I'm thinking this is probably one of the kids' parents, because at that time Lake Braddock had a high preponderance of military people. He walks up to me after practice, and the practice was unbelievable, somewhere between Chinese fire drill and chaos. David and Paul McGinnis and Dennis Stewart and a couple of the other kids had been playing on a team that Steve Price had started over at Annandale Youth Club. So they were kind of like player coaches, and together we would get through practice. He said, "Looks like you need some help." And I thought, boy, that's the understatement of the year. 60 people that have never played lacrosse, and me. And I said, "Are you a former player?" And he looked at me in a very humble way and said, well, I played a little bit at West Point. That guy that played a little bit at West Point was the defenseman of the year in 1959, a guy named Don Tiller. And Don Tiller came out and helped. And that's just one of the great stories of people who, during the evolution of lacrosse in Northern Virginia, came out and helped out. A man named Ed Britton, who was from the Naval Academy, Ed was instrumental in helping getting the youth clubs to buy into lacrosse. Because at that time, Braddock Road Youth Club, our biggest youth club, had 4,000 people playing soccer, and we don't have any space for any other clubs. I said, okay. Well, Ed Britton, if any of you that knew Ed went in there like a fireball and came out, and they found space, and everything seemed to be okay. But he's one of the people that really helped to get things going. You know, when you're a new team and a new sport, you instantly have a lot of friends. And those friends are coaches from other schools that are looking for a game for homecoming. and I would get calls from people all over the East Coast. I think every coach in Maryland wanted to play us. First couple of years, we had 18 games. Down in Charlottesville, we were their feeding frenzy. We would go down there and play all the teams in Charlottesville, and we'd lose 18-2 and 17-1 or something. Oh, thanks, great for coming, you know. And everybody on their team got to play. I can remember I lost my first goalie that way. A kid took 56. Somebody took 56 shots on him, and he came up after that and said, "Coach, I'm not so sure this is for me." That was the last we saw of him. You know, his career as a goalie was over. You couldn't buy any equipment at that time. There was none available. I love to hear Dick's Sporting Goods and Modell's say on the television now, we're the largest supplier of lacrosse in Northern Virginia. In the 70s, you couldn't buy a stick in lacrosse, and when you went into a sports shop and you asked for lacrosse equipment, they would look at you like you were a Martian or something. Well, Bob Dodson, some of you know Bobby, he was a character. He ran the back rack store in Severna Park. And Bobby and Chris Hutcherson, Chris was the owner of Back Rack, allowed us to have some credit. And I would drive over once or twice a week to Severna Park with like a grocery list of things and checks to buy equipment because you couldn't buy any equipment in Northern Virginia. And I always remember Bobby Dodson when I'd walk in at that store in Severna Park, just kind of laughing, you know, and saying, you know, this thing's going to work out for you. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, you know, I'm keeping the gear in my file cabinet at school. I'm keeping the gear in my car trunk. The school authorities will not let us practice on any school fields. We had to walk like a mile down to an elementary school site that was being developed to practice. During that time, this is, I guess, 73, 74, Glenn Thiel was the coach at the University of Virginia. And I always think about Glenn, you know, I think he won the national championship that year, but he was the kind of guy that 2 weekends in a row, he came down from Charlottesville and gave our guys clinics. And I can remember like it was yesterday, Tommy Duquette, and some of you I'm sure know Tommy or have had some dealing with him. He's the coach at Norfolk Academy now. Tommy would get out there and he would shoot behind his head, and the kids would stand there with their mouths agape. You know, it was like the man was a god. And you know, that was just something, the kind of thing, the support that we had. For the first 3 years, the Maryland schools, the private schools, the military schools, everybody was having a feeding frenzy with us. We were just, our accomplishment was if we could throw a ball and one guy throw it and the other guy catch it. We thought we were really on the right track. We could not clear the ball. Some of you are familiar with the Gilman clear. We are the ones who most used the Gilman clear. Our goalie would take the shot off his body and just pick it up and chuck it down the other end and yell Gilman. Well, in that situation, you know, you got a 50-50 chance of getting the ball. So, you know, that was the way it was. Eventually, we got better. The turning point for Northern Virginia lacrosse was 1978. We went to the bowl at Episcopal. Joe Sheeler, a good friend of mine, was the coach there at Episcopal. And the first 2 years we'd played them, they had sent us to school. You know, they gave us a clinic and we didn't get a T-shirt at the end. I think it was 18-2 and 19-4, something like that. You know, everybody got to play, you know, and they were just having a great time. But we show up for year 3. And they're laughing during the workouts, and, you know, here come the fresh meat again. Everybody's going to get to play. Well, to make a long story short, our kids had done a lot of work. They had gone to camp, and I want to digress for a minute and tell you about just quickly when I went to Bob Scott's camp at Hopkins. I went to Bob Scott's camp at Hopkins. I was the only Virginia coach there. And all these MSA coaches and very experienced coaches were there. And Bob Scott was off talking about different rides and zone defenses and slides and everything. And all the coaches are sitting there saying, yeah, we do that. I think we might want to use that. I'm sitting there trying to write everything down, okay? Feeling like I've got a square head. But it helped. We ended up, we beat Joe that day 11-4. And it was the first time that a private school had ever been beaten by a club team. And Joe was so mad. And Joe, I don't think, be mad at me for saying this, but he wouldn't shake after the game. He was just incensed. And he called me later that evening. It was very congratulatory and saying, oh, I'm sorry, I just lost control. But that was the beginning. At that time, Steve Price was entering the equation. Dr. Price has been the coach at Lake Braddock for the last 3 eons. I don't know how many, 30 years, I guess. But Steve came on board and brought all of his expertise with him. And the program got better. We got the youth clubs to pick up lacrosse. And I witnessed an evolution of people being soccer crazy Northern Virginia. And how I knew it was changing. In 1978, we were playing Woodson High School. We were playing at Lake Braddock. You're saying, but they wouldn't let you use the field. That's right, we had to pay them to use the field. We had to pay them out of our dues and everything to use the stadium. Keeping in mind, the athletic director was not in love with lacrosse. So begrudgingly, the parents, we had fundraising, selling bumper stickers and pineapples and anything you could sell. We got together $700, and that's how much they charged us for that night. Well, we had over 800 people show up for that 1978 Woodson Lake Braddock team, that game between 2 club teams. At that point, I knew that it was going to stick and we were going to make it. There were a lot of people at that time at other schools that were fighting the same battle that I was fighting. Tim Daly over at Woodson had a club team. Howard Thomas at West Springfield was fighting over there. And Paul St. Germain, we all know Paul, the man, the myth, the legend. Paul was in high school back then, trying to start a team at Robinson. So it's been a long road, but it's been a great road. And it's been to see now in Fairfax County, every school have a boys and girls varsity and junior varsity lacrosse team is worth all the hard work and abuse and aggravation that we went through during those early years. And I'd like to thank Steve Price. Steve's not here tonight, but Steve has kept that program going. I'd like to thank my wife, Sue, who's sitting back here, for putting up with all the aggravation that we went through in those years. I'd like to thank my sons, Hunt and Aaron. Hunt ended up playing for Lake Braddock and playing for Coach Price and was the captain of the team and an attackman on that team. I'd like to thank all those people, but I'd also like to thank the Potomac chapter, the selection committee, and all of you for recognizing that the evolution of lacrosse was not an easy road, but I can tell you it was worth every minute of it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Kim.
I think it's me, Pat.
I think it's your turn. Okay, Kim Hutcherson is our next inductee, and Kim is one in the sport of lacrosse who has really done it all. She was an exceptional goalkeeper at the high school and college level. She's been a coach at all levels, from the college level all the way down now to the middle school level where she is presently. She's the founder of summer league programs, indoor league programs, again, another pioneer. She served as an officer here in the chapter. She served as an officer for the Independent School League, always calling me saying, okay, Pat, time to come talk about the rules. When are you coming in with us? Always waited for that phone call every year from Kim. She's been a selector, a clinician, and apparently even did some umpiring. So, Suzanne, there's hope for you. I'll tell you, but when I hear the name Kim Hutcherson, I always think Holton Arms. Kim's career at Holton spanned almost 20 years. And again, when she was there, she really did it all. She was the director of physical education. She was the athletic director. She was a highly successful coach. There's this theme here with this two-sport thing. She was the field hockey coach as well as the lacrosse coach at Holton. Countless numbers of young women at Holton benefited from Kim's teaching and coaching. And I'd like to read a quote from one of Kim's former athletes. And as I read this quote a number of times before the ceremony and thought about this, this really could apply to Mary Pat as well. It just fits the type of coach that Kim is and that Mary Pat is. So I'd like to read this to you. Suzanne actually sent this to me. I didn't know this. Holton Arms has a magazine. That's Suzanne on the cover, in case anybody can't see that. This is from back in 1991. And the theme of the issue was athletics at Holton. And so a part of it was a story about Suzanne, but there was also a nice article by a former player of Kim's called Sally Lurton. She was quoted in the article. So I want to read Sally's quote, and it applies to Kim and also to Mary Pat, I'm sure. Let me find this here. Come on, I know you're in here. There we go. Coach Hutcherson has done a tremendous amount for me personally. She taught me to have faith in my own abilities and make me reach for higher skill levels, and most importantly, be a team player. She has supported all of her players, taking extra time to promote them for league and postseason awards, to talk to college coaches, and to fill out countless athletic recommendations. From her, we have learned to have confidence in our teammates as well as ourselves, and as a result, we have been able to excel both as a team and as individuals. I don't think there can be any higher compliment than something like that coming from a former player. So I felt like I really needed to say that in front of everybody here tonight, Kim. It's kind of interesting, the player who wrote that, Sally Lurton, she was an award winner. They have an award at Holton Arms named in honor of Suzanne, actually. It's the Suzanne Bailey Excellence in Athletics Award, and Sally was one of those award winners. So I thought that was kind of a nice symmetry there for the Holton Arms folks. So in the coming years, I'm really convinced that we're going to have a lot of exceptional lacrosse players, with Suzanne leading the way, but a lot of other exceptional lacrosse players from Holton Arms inducted here into our Chapter Hall of Fame. It's an honor for me tonight to present their coach, Kim Hutcherson, for induction into the Chapter Hall of Fame. Kim?
And I remembered way back when Sally Lurton, who that quote is from, is now Sally Lurton Taylor, and she just called me this spring to give her some drills because of her 5-year-old, or 5th grade students' daughters. She's coaching now, so she's like, Coach, help me. So they never go away, unfortunately. I'm humbled and honored to stand before you tonight. Certainly when I got the phone call from Pat about the news of this award, for once in my life I was speechless.
That's true.
My deepest thanks go to Homer, Pat, the selection committee, and Potomac chapter of U.S. Lacrosse for the privilege of standing before you tonight. My highest congratulations go to my fellow class of inductees. Many of us have been intertwined, as you have heard, and hail from the River Road corridor. It has made tonight's occasion that much more special to share this honor with these people. Bud, you've worked tirelessly for lacrosse in Virginia. Ryan, even though I never saw you play, I certainly feel like I know you from listening to the Holton girls recap all your heroics on the field. Your heroics on the field, Ryan. Mike, I valued your friendship and help for over 20 years. Mary Pat, not only do we share our Frostburg and Theta connections, but we've also had many memorable contests on the field. And lastly, Suzanne, the circle is small as a Holton alumnae, watching you play on the U.S. team and reading your induction speech as an inaugural member of the Holton Hall of Fame. I consider myself fortunate and congratulate each of you tonight. As I was organizing my thoughts for tonight, it became immediately clear that it would not be easy to take what 30-plus years of lacrosse has meant to me and to narrow that down into a few words. It's hard to imagine that what began as an activity back in my teenage days has led to a lifelong passion. Many of us who pursue teaching and coaching careers do so and know that the hours are long and sometimes the noticeable rewards are few. My satisfaction in lacrosse has not been defined by win-loss records. While I'm fortunate to have had the opportunity to coach a lot of outstanding athletes, some of my clearest memories on the field have been following losing contests. Those have been the times that teaching and coaching really began for us, and that we had to pick up the spirits of our young athletes and give them a renewed belief in their talents. It hasn't always been easy to turn those I can'ts into the I cans, or I'll try on the sidelines. The ultimate goal of coaching, very similar to some of the things Mary Pat said, has been to make my athletes better people. It's always a challenge to take a group of individuals and teach them the importance and understanding the concept of team. There have certainly been occasions, many of them, where the team superstars may find themselves on the sidelines instead of on the field because they were unable to put their personal heroics behind them and work for the better of the team. As you can well imagine, these are very controversial decisions, but our focus wasn't on producing those superstars. Instead, we focused on the character development piece, never giving up and never leaving the field with no regrets. Looking back, though, I can think of a few times where we took the concept of team building a bit too far. One of our team building concepts, as many of the people sitting in the room, was to take spring break trips. Maybe one of the biggest regrets I have as a coach was in driving a Holton van, not once, but twice, to Florida with a van full of Holton students. Pulling into south of the border, there was the charter bus carrying Visitation, Sidwell, and Stone Ridge. Weaver and her crew were well rested and happily watching their videos on the bus, while we were listening to the rowdy bunch of teenagers cramped in the small Holton van listening to Paula Abdul songs. Certainly, the idea of being part of a team was about the connections with others and the camaraderie. Whether, and our girls were famous for this, wearing matching hair bows, spandex, shoelaces, or Pat, indeed, performing a pregame ritual with a voodoo doll of an official. Not you, I might say. Our girls learned to value the importance of team. I am both proud and a little embarrassed that I starred in my fair share of morning assembly skits and even wore a very preppy lobster belt as a good luck charm for the better part of one season. The lobster belt, though, still has its magical powers, as it's led my middle school team to only one loss in the last 2 years. In the end, I believe one can only prepare a team so much, and then they need to realize their inner potential. I used to think that every word we said as coaches during games was of utmost importance. This changed one day during halftime of one of our games. Some of you know that my dogs were frequent spectators on the sidelines of my practices and games. My current dog, Rebel, was tied just right behind our bench. During what I'm sure was a game-changing halftime speech, I look up at my players, who are all laughing. Frustrated that they weren't listening, I turned around and looked behind me, and there was Rebel with his tail in his mouth, rolling down the hill like a donut. I decided then that sometimes humor is the best release in a hotly contested game. The ability to have fun and laugh are some of the many life lessons that we sought to instill in our girls. The importances of dedication, perseverance, sportsmanship, fair play, and keeping things in perspective have always been points of emphasis. I have been fortunate to have had the opportunity to have alums come back and coach alongside me and see firsthand that these are lessons well learned. I think one of the hardest things in preparing my remarks for tonight is the journey has never been about me. The destination has only been achieved by being surrounded by great supportive people, whether it was family, friends, or colleagues. From the Mother's Day spent at the ISL tournament at Madeira to the dog-sitting duties while on spring break trips, my gratitude goes out to my parents for their love, support, and encouragement. My college friends have had to endure many games in person and listen patiently to the play-by-play recaps and endless stories. For the Holton contingent, you have provided much advice and comic relief. At the end of the day, my satisfaction from lacrosse is no different from what I hope for my players. I have enjoyed every moment. The Pete Rose side bets with Jill during our games, wanting to run on the field and score that overtime goal myself against Weaver, hoping that the stick check against Swecker went our way, and laughing as I tallied stats from a tape recorder that included plenty of commentary from my assistant coaches. We have all been part of the intense competitions and the camaraderie and kept things in perspective. We have all challenged each other to reach towards our best. I thank all of you who have supported me throughout my career and beyond. Again, my sincere thanks go to the Potomac chapter and U.S. Lacrosse for all their efforts in supporting and advancing lacrosse for everyone. I'm humbled to stand before you tonight with such an elite group. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Well, guess who's last? The anchor man, even though he's broken. I do have to tell you one story, and it does relate. Pat's an umpire, and I am a referee, so to speak. So I came down here and met Tom Shekels, and I said, Tom, I'd like to meet some of the lacrosse people in the area. He says, well, why don't you referee? And I said, never thought about that. So, you know, I started out refereeing, and pretty soon I realized that they didn't need me out there knocking heads with the Mike DelGrandes and the Boardleys and the rest of the crowd out there. So as you learn the game, refereeing, you work your way up to the IAC game where Mike was. And I remember the first IAC game was one of Mike's games. And I'm over on the sideline by the bench, and I have to make a call, and I'll admit, I couldn't see because there were 3 players in front of me. So I made the call. I don't know if it was right or not, but it doesn't matter. Mike goes, you got to be in position to make that call. I went, you're right. It'll never happen again. And he was right, and he's always right. He's one of the great coaches in the area. I've played with him, played against him, refereed with him. I won't say refereed against him. But 20 years at Bullis, he brought the program from one of the beginning programs to a great program and a great school, and I won't belabor it, but let me bring up Mike DelGrande for induction.
Thank you, Homer. I probably have a lot of stories that I could share with you about Homer and Bobby and Bill and John and everyone else. One of my Tom Shekels stories, it was probably my first year that I was a head coach at Bullis. and I might have not agreed with one of Tom's calls. I mean, generally, I pretty much agreed with all the officials, but there was this one time I didn't agree with Tom, and I needed to stress my point after the game. And so we used to play on the lower field, and so Tom is running up to his car. He used to park in the senior lot, so these guys know where the senior lot is, and I'm running after Tom, and I just, in Mike DelGrande fashion, vein popping out in the middle of my forehead, I said, I went after Tom. All right, I'll admit it, I went after him. So, later on that day, I called up my AD, and I said I need Tom Sheckel's number. So I called Tom up, and I apologize, as I know I've done to a lot of you over and over for many, many years. And I called him up, and we made up, and next game I yelled at him again. So, but it just, I have a great respect for all of you guys and what you do, and somehow, I don't know why they did this, they asked me to be an official. And so my last 2 years here, I was an official, and it completely changed a lot, for me in terms of the game. I remember the first time I missed a call. It was the only time, but it was the first time I missed a call. I had a coach say something to me, and then all of a sudden I started listening to what the coaches were saying to me as an official. I listened to what the parents were saying to me as an official, and I started saying stuff back. So, no, but I mean, it wasn't bad. I mean, as the head of the officials, the assigner, I didn't say anything bad, but I just started, joking with them as these guys did with me over the years, and I just. I do appreciate it from the other end. I do want to thank Homer Schwartz and everyone from the Potomac chapter of U.S. Lacrosse for including me with this class and inducting me into this chapter's Hall of Fame. I feel honored to be included with this great group of individuals and was completely surprised by the call from Homer informing me of this honor. Homer called me last year to inform me about the induction, and I felt I had plenty of time to get prepared. That was last February. And as of 9 a.m. this morning, we got in our car in Philadelphia. I had yet to write anything. My wife, she said, okay, I'll drive and you can go. And so I'm driving down. My wife, my 4-year-old daughter, and our babysitter in the back, and I can't get anything done. They're singing, they're doing whatever. But finally, by the time I got down here, I had some words. But to me, it's hard to write something for an event such as this, regardless of how much time you do have. What do you say to this group that they haven't heard before? Well, then I realized that there were probably a number of individuals within this room that I needed to say something to that I hadn't said before leaving this year. First, the officials. I apologize. I also want you guys to know that I've now taken that same loud, questioning show to Pennsylvania with all the same antics as before.
Working for you up there?
Yeah, it is. Although I have learned, just try to make friends with them first before you start yelling at them. So I have adjusted my approach. I also want to thank, and I haven't seen him here, and my good friend Josh gives me a hard time, but I want to thank Kevin Giblin, who he was and still is, but he was a great friend while I was down here. He was someone that I could, talk with all the time, and I would constantly go over to Modern Day, disrupt his class, and all the boys were looking at me, and, isn't that the Bullets coach? Yeah, and Kevin would just got to say, it's all right, it's okay for him to be here. Lastly, and I know you guys would like to get back to the bar, as would I. I want to thank some people. Although my parents were unable to be here this evening, they did plan on being here last February. My dad was torn. My dad's a Notre Dame grad, and Notre Dame was playing Navy today, so my dad chose to go to the Notre Dame Navy game. Now, for those of you that haven't seen the score, Notre Dame just got absolutely drilled today by Navy. My dad graduated the class of '50, and so he was there when they won 3 national championships. And for him, he was just so excited to go. And I said, Dad, go ahead, you're going to have a great time. Oops, I was wrong. The second group of people are all those guys that helped build the Bullis lacrosse program over the years. This includes all my assistant coaches and players that without their help, Bullis would have never been as successful as it was. These assistant coaches included people like Paul Bishop. I wish I knew where he was, but I don't. And these guys know who Bish was. Bish used to have these two basset hounds that just, he'd bring to practice every day and just drove me crazy. Tim Simpson, Josh Witchard, Jeff Balestri, and Bobby Policino. Bobby is now the new head coach at Bullis, and I'm very proud of the job he did last year. On April 2nd of this upcoming year, Bobby, I need your help because I'm bringing Chestnut Hill Academy down to Bullis. So if I'll call you, need to make sure we have the right officials out there. I've already told Dre, who's the AD there, and Bobby that I'll pay for the officials. So that's coming out of my pocket, double the price. I also then want to thank players such as Clayton Simmers and Brian Rolap in the beginning. And these guys were followed by the brothers Raymond and Witchard, Davis and Hollingsworth, Swanwick, Donahue, Burke, Will, and Fisher, and other individuals such as Josh Posnick, Ross, and Brad Ross, to name a few. And then I've got final two individuals who I really want to thank. The first is a really good friend who I coached as a player, and then he assisted me for a number of years as we really got the program going. He was the first player who really made a name for himself as a player from Bullis program. And he set the bar high for all others to follow. He was an All-American in OWU, and after graduation became the offensive coordinator for our program. We would spend countless hours on the phone talking lacrosse, and either celebrating or commiserating about the day's games afterwards. It might have involved a beverage or two, but he was also a teammate in club ball, and the player I tried to model myself after. For those of you, and I might be dating myself right now, but there used to be a show on TV with David Carradine called Kung Fu. And there was the Master Po and Grasshopper, who was David Carradine. And, you know, it was Master Po who was myself, and then he was Grasshopper in the beginning. But then in club ball, when I played with him, the roles kind of got reversed. And at that point, I became Grasshopper, the student, and Master Po, and I just tried to emulate my game after his. Lastly, we were neighbors and close friends, and Josh, I thank you very much for that. And the last person I want to thank is my wife, Heather. 5 weeks ago, she had to deal with this. She did not think that she'd have to bathe me, put my clothes on. I remember the first time I was able to take a shower. I think it was 3 days after the surgery, and I can't dry myself at that point. I only have one arm. I'm not supposed to move this one. And I start to dry myself, and she just looks at me, and I said, "Do not touch me. I got it. I can do this." Being a coach's wife, as many of you know, is not easy. And also being an AD's wife, along with that, is even tougher. She has handled both quite well over the years, and for this I'm very thankful and grateful. I know, Josh, sometimes she complained, but, you know. I knew years ago that she was the one when at a Reebok party, this was the club team that we both played for out in Virginia, she arrived after we had been at the party for a while. She gets out of the car, crosses the road to greet me, and Josh meets her halfway up the lawn before I could get to her with probably the best form tackle I have ever seen. Shoulder down, head up, grabbed her behind the legs, kept his legs moving, and planted her squarely on the ground. She gets up startled, but smiling, and I knew right then and there, after I gave Josh a high five, that she was the real deal. Heather, thanks for being there through everything as my best friend, sounding board, and wife. Thank you all very much. All right, I'll just lean in there. All right.
I got one more.
Okay. Is he taking it? All right. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Okay. There you have them, a great group. Let's give the class of 2010, postponed to now, a great hand. Okay, everybody but the inductees can go to the bar. You have to come up here and take your picture. Thanks you all for coming. It was a great night once again, and we'll do it every year. Let's see.